The dollar that changed everything asterisk. It was a cold Thursday morning in San Francisco, and the streets hadn't yet come alive. The sun was still hiding behind thick gray clouds, the kind that made the air feel heavier, like the day itself was reluctant to begin. Fog hung low, wrapping street corners like tired arms. Pigeons pecked at yesterday's breadcrumbs, while early walkers rushed past the homeless like they were invisible stains on the sidewalk. A man sat cross-legged near a trash can outside a coffee shop that hadn't opened yet. His clothes were torn, his beard overgrown, and his hands wrapped in duct tape for warmth. No one made eye contact. Not one person offered even a glance, except for him. Sundar Pichai. Not the Sundar Pichai from a tech conference stage. Not the one in a suit surrounded by flashing cameras and polite applause. No, this Sundar wore a simple hoodie and jeans, his eyes shadowed by a baseball cap. He walked without bodyguards or an entourage. To anyone else, he was just another man out for a walk. Maybe that's why the old homeless man dared to speak. "Hey," the voice cracked like old wood. "Can you give me $1?" Sundar stopped. He didn't flinch, didn't pretend not to hear. He just looked at the man, really looked at him. The man's eyes were tired but not empty. There was something behind them. A spark. A challenge. Sundar reached into his pocket slowly, not for money but for something deeper. "What's your name?" he asked. The man blinked. No one ever asked that, not in years. Michael. Sundar nodded. "Nice to meet you, Michael." Michael's mouth curled into a crooked smile. "You're the first person who's said that in a long time." "How long?" Sundar asked. "Since my wife died. Since my daughter stopped talking to me. Since I lost my job." "Maybe longer." It was a long silence. The city started to hum quietly around them. A streetcar clanged in the distance. Someone coughed. A dog barked once. Sundar finally reached into his other pocket and pulled out a crisp $1 bill. He held it out, but then, just as Michael reached for it, Sundar said, "What if I told you this dollar could change your life?" Michael laughed, a deep, raspy sound full of disbelief. "Man, it's $1. You can't even get a cup of coffee with that anymore." "But what if it wasn't just about the money?" Sundar said. "What if it was about the story, the journey you're on? Maybe it starts with $1, but it doesn't end there." Michael stared at him. Something shifted in his eyes. For the first time in years, maybe he felt seen, and that scared him more than the cold, the hunger, or even the silence. "Who are you?" Michael asked. Sundar gave a soft smile. "Just someone who's been lucky. And maybe someone who sees a little bit of himself in you." And that's when it happened. From across the street, a shiny black car pulled up. The window rolled down slowly, and a familiar voice, cool, amused and unmistakable, called out, "Are you giving out dollars now, Sundar? Should I get in line?" Michael's jaw dropped. He didn't know who the man standing with him was, but he sure knew the man in the car. Elon Musk. Yes, that Elon Musk. And he was smirking. Sundar turned toward the car, his calm stillness never breaking. "Hey, Ellen." Ellen leaned out the window, sunglasses on, an electric grin on his face. "What's going on here? Are you buying inspiration by the dollar now? Or just saving souls one sidewalk at a time?" Michael looked between them, his heart pounding. What kind of strange, surreal moment was he trapped in? Was this real? Was he dreaming? Elon's eyes finally settled on Michael, and then, to everyone's shock, he stepped out of the car. Michael backed up instinctively. His world didn't involve billionaires stepping out of luxury cars to talk to homeless men. "You asked for $1?" Elon said, stepping closer. "How about this? I'll give you 10,000. Right now." Sundar's voice was quiet but firm. "Elon, don't." "Why not?" Elon shrugged. "He asked for money. I'm offering it. Seems like a win-win to me." But Michael, still dazed, looked to Sundar instead. And that's when he realized something powerful. He didn't want the 10,000. He wanted something else. Something the money couldn't buy. "What do you want from me?" he whispered. Sundar's reply was soft, almost like a whisper carried on the wind. "I want to know who you used to be, and who you still might become." And just like that, the dollar stayed in his hand, untouched. Elon laughed, more out of confusion than anything else. Well, this is new. The homeless man who refuses a check from Elon Musk. Michael's eyes burned, not with anger, but with something deeper, something beginning to wake up. I wasn't always like this, he said. I used to run a company. I used to have a team, a life, purpose. Sundar nodded slowly. And maybe it's time we find that man again. And with that, the story truly began. None of them knew how much that moment would change. Not just Michael, but Sundar, and even Elon. Because what started as a single request for $1 would soon spiral into a journey none of them expected. A journey that would test their values, tear open old wounds, and force them to face truths they had long buried. A journey that would make the world watch, and in some cases, weep. But for now, the only sound was the soft rustle of the dollar in Sundar's hand. Waiting, and the look in Michael's eyes. Somewhere between hope and fear. Somewhere between lost and found. The dollar that changed everything. Michael didn't sleep that night. Not on the bench, not under the awning where he usually tried to disappear. His body stayed still, but his mind traveled. It paced through hallways of memories he had boarded. Up long ago, memories of a bright office, glass walls, and a whiteboard filled with ideas. A daughter laughing while swinging her tiny feet beneath a kitchen table. His wife humming as she made breakfast, the smell of toast and fresh paper. Images used to be part of his everyday, and now they came back like ghosts knocking softly at the door. And for the first time in years, he opened it. The next morning, Sundar came back. Same hoodie, same calm presence. But this time he brought coffee. 2 cups. He handed one to Michael without saying a word. They sat together on the cold sidewalk. 2 men from completely different worlds, sipping from paper cups like old friends. Finally, Sundar asked, "You said you used to run a company? What happened?" Michael didn't answer right away. He took a long sip and stared at the rising sun as if the words might be hiding in its warmth. "I believe too much in people," he said finally. "I trusted a partner who didn't trust me back. I put my savings into an idea we built together. He emptied our account and disappeared. Left me to face the debt, the lawsuits, the shame." He shook his head and gave a soft laugh, one that tasted like regret. "I lost everything except my name, and then I lost that too." Sundar nodded slowly, like he wasn't surprised. Not because the story was predictable, but because it was human. "But you're still here," he said. "That counts for something." "Does it?" Michael asked, glancing down at his tattered shoes. Being alive isn't the same as living. That was the first time Sundar asked the question that would change everything. "If I told you there was still a way back, ... would you take it?" Michael frowned. "Back to what? The boardroom? The stress? The fake smiles and overpriced coffee? You think I want to chase all that again?" "No," Sundar replied. "I think you want to remember who you are. And that's not about money or status, it's about purpose." Michael didn't answer. But in that silence, something began to stir again. Later that week, Sundar introduced Michael to someone unexpected. A woman named Leah. She ran a small tech nonprofit a few blocks away. Nothing fancy. 5 employees, a cramped space, broken chairs, but a mission rooted in something real. They built digital tools to help the homeless find access to services, shelters, and job. Resources. He used to run operations, Sundar told her, nodding toward Michael. "You might want to hear him out." Leah raised an eyebrow. "You bringing me another guy with a dream?" "No," Sundar said. "I'm bringing you someone with scars, the useful kind." Leah agreed to hear Michael's story, and as he spoke, something in her expression changed. Her crossed arms relaxed, her eyes lit up. "You ever build team dashboards?" she asked. "Back-end structure, workflow tools?" "I lived in spreadsheets," Michael said with a half smile. "And yeah, I can fix a busted workflow blindfolded." She hired him. Part-time, no salary yet. It's just a desk and a reason to wake up in the morning. But the moment Michael walked into that dusty office for the first time, his hands shaking and heart pounding, it wasn't the desk or the code that mattered. It was the feeling he was no longer invisible, yet just as things began to feel brighter, life, as it often does, pulled the rug. It started with a news article. A headline, really. Google CEO meets with homeless man, Elon Musk offers 10,000. The article went viral. Photos someone had snapped from across the street. Sundar handing Michael the dollar, Elon stepping out of the car. Everyone wanted to know who the mystery man was. But Michael wasn't ready for that spotlight. He wasn't ready for his shame to be turned into a meme, or for strangers to debate his worth based on one photo. But someone else noticed that article, too. His daughter. And for the first time in 5 years, she sent him a message. 3 words. That you? Michael stared at the screen for an hour before replying, yes. She didn't respond. The next day, someone broke into the nonprofit office. They didn't steal anything valuable, just trashed the place. Papers torn, cables pulled out, coffee poured onto laptops. No one knew why. No one understood the message, until Michael found the note left on his desk. You don't deserve to. Start over. He didn't recognize the handwriting. The words cut through him like a razor made of memories. He didn't tell Sundar. He just cleaned it up, and when Leah asked him if he was okay, he smiled. Better than ever. But inside, he wasn't sure, because now the journey wasn't just about healing, it was about surviving in somewhere. Someone didn't want him to. The dollar that changed everything, the rain came softly at first, like a whisper on the windows, as if the sky wanted to cry but didn't want to be heard. Michael sat at his desk in the small office, watching the drops run down the glass like lost thoughts. The air smelled of wet paper and solder from an old circuit board someone left on a shelf. Most of the team had gone home, but Michael stayed. Not to work, but to think. To figure out how a man could start to heal and then be reminded, so suddenly, that not everyone wants him healed. The note stayed folded in his jacket pocket. Not because he wanted to keep it, but because throwing it away felt like admitting it still controlled him. And deep down it did. Those words had crawled into his chest like vines, wrapping around old wounds that hadn't finished closing. He'd read it again this morning before leaving his shelter cot, as if to confirm it hadn't just been a bad dream. You don't deserve to start over. Such a simple sentence, yet somehow heavier than all the nights he had slept in the rain. He didn't tell Leah. Not because he didn't trust her, because she looked at him now with something fragile. Hope. And he didn't want to be the reason it cracked outside. Footsteps echoed on the wet pavement, and for a moment he thought he was imagining them. But then the office door creaked open. Sundar stepped inside, holding a large umbrella and 2 paper bags that smelled like lentils and cardamom. He placed one on Michael's desk and said nothing, just nodded. They ate in silence, and the silence was warm. I saw the office this morning, Sundar finally said, wiping his fingers with a napkin, and the note. Michael didn't react. What? He didn't even blink, just kept eating. You didn't want to tell me? Sundar said softly. No. Why? Because I knew how you'd look at me. Sundar leaned back. And how's that? Like I'm still worth something. There was a long pause between them. It's a kind that only exists between 2 people who've seen life from the gutter and the mountaintop. Sundar didn't try to change Michael's mind. He didn't offer a motivational quote or some clever metaphor about resilience. He simply said, you are. But Michael wasn't ready to believe it. Later that night, after Sundar left and the streets went dark, Michael walked. He didn't know where he was going. The rain had stopped, but the cold remained, like a quiet warning. He passed the coffee shop where it all began, then turned down an alley he used to sleep in, as the brick walls still had the same cracks. The old mattress was gone, but the silence remained. As he stood there, a figure appeared at the far end of the alley, hooded, slow, deliberate. Michael's chest tightened. He took a step back, but the figure didn't move closer. A voice came out, low and scratchy. You're supposed to stay down. Michael said nothing. Men like you don't get a second chance. You had your shot. You blew it. Stop pretending you're someone again. The voice didn't shake with anger. It was calm, practiced, like someone repeating a script they had memorized for years. Michael stepped forward. Who are you? The figure paused, then laughed quietly. You don't remember? But I remember you. Then the figure turned and vanished into the night, leaving only a shadow behind. Michael chased him, but the alley led to a dead end, and by the time he got there, there was no one. Only the sound of a distant train and the metallic clink of a bottle rolling down the gutter. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. The words replayed over and over. "You don't remember? But I remember you." He woke up early and went back to the office, even before Leah arrived. He sat at his desk, opened his old email account, one he hadn't checked in years, and started digging. The past had names. Maybe one of them still held a grudge. 3 hours in, he found it, a name he hadn't thought about in almost a decade. Rafik, his old co-founder. The one who emptied the bank accounts, one who disappeared with their funding and buried Michael under the debt. Michael remembered the last argument they had. How Rafik had blamed him for missing a deadline. How Michael had tried to protect the team and lost the investor in the process. How their friendship, once built on coffee-fueled nights and shared dreams, had burned down without ceremony. No apologies. No explanation. And now, maybe Rafik was back later that day. Sundar called him into a quiet meeting room. "Elon's coming back," he said. Michael's stomach twisted. "Why? He wants to see what happened to the dollar." Michael looked down at his hands. He still had tiny cuts from cleaning up broken monitors after the break-in. They still trembled sometimes when he typed too fast. "You think this is a game to him?" "No," Sundar said. "I think Elon likes chaos, but he respects people who rise through it." Michael sighed. "I'm not a symbol. I'm just trying to fix something." That's exactly why he's coming, true to his word. That evening, the same sleek car pulled up again. This time, Michael opened the door before Sundar could even greet him. Elon stepped out, looked him up and down, and smiled. Well, I said. "Looks like the dollar bought you a shave." "And a purpose," Michael replied. Elon tilted his head. "We'll see." And then, in front of the nonprofit team, Sundar, Leah, and a couple confused interns holding coffee, Elon asked one question. "Do you want to build something again?" Michael froze. "You're kidding." "I'm not. I've been watching. Your dashboards, your workflows. That's good structure, real structure. And I need someone who knows how to build through fire." Michael looked at Sundar. Sundar said nothing, only nodded. But before Michael could answer, Leah stepped in. "If you take him," she said quietly, "make sure you don't break him again." And suddenly, it wasn't about a job offer. It was about trust. It was about who Michael wanted to become next. But before he could decide, his phone buzzed. A new message from his daughter. "Just for words this time. I want to talk." And that broke something in him, not in a painful way, but like light breaking through clouds. He looked at Elon and then at Sundar, and finally at himself, reflected in the glass door. And he said, "Not yet. Something I have to fix first." The dollar that changed everything, Michael, stood outside the diner for a long time before walking in. It was one of those old places with red leather booths, menus stuck between ketchup bottles, and a faint hum of a broken ceiling fan that no one had fixed in years. The kind of place where stories start and end over pancakes and coffee. She was already there, seated by the window, staring at a glass of water like it held the answers to questions neither of them had ever asked. His daughter, her hair was shorter now, her eyes sharper, but it was her. Out. Without question. And for a moment, he was 17 again, holding her hand the day she learned to walk. For a moment, he forgot the years in between. He walked toward her slowly, unsure if each step would bring him closer or tear something loose inside him. She looked up as he approached, and their eyes met, not with smiles or tears, but with something heavier. Recognition. Not just of who they were, but of everything they hadn't said. He sat down across from her and said the only thing he could think of. "Thank you for coming." She didn't smile. She didn't cry. But she nodded. That was enough. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was filled. The absence. With history, with the weight of old birthdays missed and phone calls unanswered. Finally, she spoke. "You really slept on the street?" He nodded. "I did." "For how long?" "Too long." "Mom said, you gave?" Up. He looked down at the table. Maybe I did, but not on you. On myself. That cracked something in her. She blinked fast, trying to hide the shimmer building in her eyes. I needed you, she said. You just disappeared. I was ashamed, he whispered. I thought I'd broken everything. I didn't know how to come back. She looked. Out the window. The world kept moving out there. People with coffee cups and bus passes, lives spinning forward, and now he took a breath, deep, shaky, honest. Now I'm trying. She looked back at him. And after what felt like a full lifetime pressed into a single second, she reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Good. They didn't need to say more. Not yet. Maybe never. Healing, real healing, didn't come with speeches. It came with being there, showing up, staying seated when every part of you wanted to run outside. The clouds began to break, but somewhere else in the city, a storm was building. Raw, acute. He had been watching from the shadows for weeks. Not in the dramatic sense, no trench coats or dark alleys, but through quiet clicks, old logins. Buried accounts still tied to Michael's name. He had seen the news articles, the photos, the whispers on forums. He read about the dashboards Michael was building at the nonprofit. Worst of all, he saw people starting to admire him again. It wasn't part of the plan. Rafek lived in a luxury condo now. All white walls and chrome edges. But inside, he was still the man who never forgave Michael for the deal that fell through. In his version of the story, Michael had ruined everything. Not just the startup, but his future, his chance to be remembered. And now, Michael was back. Without asking permission, Rafek Q opened his laptop and typed an email. Subject line, warning. Message. He hasn't changed. Check the audit trails. He sent it to Leah, and just like that, the first seed of doubt was planted, back at the office. Leah read the email twice. She didn't know who it came from. The sender was masked, but the message was clear. Audit the back end. Something about Michael's code. Something dangerous, maybe even illegal. She stared at the screen for a long time, then picked up. Her phone, she called Sundar. When Sundar arrived, she handed him the printout. What do you think? He read it slowly, then folded the paper. I think someone's afraid of what Michael might become. But should we check? She asked. He nodded. Transparency is trust. And Michael would want that. That evening, Michael walked into the office feeling something strange. Lightness. After years of darkness, he'd taken the first step. Back into his daughter's life, and it felt like a second sunrise inside his chest. But when he walked in, he saw Sundar and Leah waiting for him. They didn't look angry. They looked concerned. We need to talk, Sundar said. Michael felt the air shift. What is it? Leah handed him the email. We got this today. He read it slowly, then read it again. You think this was me? He asked. We don't know, Leah said, but we need to look. And he understood. He hated it, but he understood. The next 2 hours were spent going through every line of code he'd written. Every system he'd touched, every report he had signed off on. They found nothing. No backdoors, no shady redirects, no data theft, just clean, honest. Work better than expected. Leah leaned back and exhaled. It's good. It's all good. But Michael sat very still. He's still out there, he said. Rafik, he's not done. How do you know? Sundar asked. Because I know what guilt looks like. And that email wasn't guilt. It was fear. They sat in silence for a while, and then Sundar leaned forward. So what do we do? Michael looked at them, his voice steady for the first time all day. We keep building. But that night, after everyone had left, Michael stayed behind again, and as he stared at the code on the screen, something caught his eye. A small glitch. A line he didn't remember writing. And when he followed it, he found something. Something. Buried. Something that shouldn't be there. A leak. A digital crack in the wall. And someone was watching. The dollar that changed everything asterisk, the room felt colder than usual. Not because of the weather, but because of what Michael had just seen. The line of code sat there on the screen, quiet and unassuming, like a string of normal logic. Except it wasn't it. It was a data siphon, small, almost invisible, that rerouted usage logs and user profiles to an external server. Not something a beginner could write, not a mistake. This was planted, deliberate, and the worst part was, it had his name attached to it in the commit history. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but he didn't touch anything. Not yet. His heart was loud now, not racing like panic, but pounding like warning drums. He leaned back slowly, eyes locked on the screen, as if it might blink or confess. But the code stayed silent. He thought of Leah, of her trust, the team, who now looked at him like someone who had survived the fire and walked back in just to help others out. He thought of his daughter, that hesitant smile she gave him in the diner, like a door slowly cracking open. And then he thought of Rafik. Not just the man, but the way betrayal feels when it wears a familiar face. Michael stood up. He didn't scream. He didn't rush out into the night like a hero in some cheap movie. He unplugged the Ethernet cable from the machine, made a copy of the code to a clean drive, then locked the office. Calm, controlled, surgical. Survival had taught him not to. Panic. He'd learned long ago that panic makes noise. Noise gets you burned. He went straight to Sundar's place. Not to talk. To show him, they sat side by side in Sundar's quiet kitchen. It's the only light coming from the laptop screen. Sundar's eyes narrowed as he traced the code. He said nothing for several minutes, and finally, "This is professional." "I know, and it's traced to your login." "Yes. How long has it been running?" Michael's voice was low. 10 days, maybe more. Sundar leaned back, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Then he's already collected data." "Hey, Michael?" Nodded. "And when he goes public, it'll look like I was behind it the whole time." They sat in silence. The kind that fills rooms when decisions must be made. Sundar finally broke it. "We go to Leah. Show her everything. You think she'll believe me? She will, because she should." And she did. Leah took one look at the log files, the access patterns, the timestamps. She didn't ask why. Michael hadn't caught it sooner. She didn't flinch. She simply said, "We cut the connection. Rebuild the back end. Clean sweep." Now, the next 48 hours were a storm of cables, caffeine, and relentless typing. Michael slept on the floor. So did Leah. The interns didn't understand everything happening, but they felt it, the urgency, the danger. The line between holding onto something beautiful and watching it slip through their fingers. Word got out fast. The board of donors called an emergency meeting. Someone had leaked screenshots. Not of the code, but of Michael's name on those commit logs. And then came the articles. Former CEO turned homeless, accused in data breach. Photos of Michael and Sundar on the sidewalk reappeared. The story shifted. Admiration turned to suspicion overnight. Reporters came. Microphones waited outside, and still Michael didn't run. "We go public," Sundar said. Not with a defense, with the truth. But Michael wasn't sure the world wanted truth. He'd seen it too many times, how people loved the fall more than the rise. How the same crowd that cheered for your comeback would happily light the match to your reputation, and then his daughter called. Not a text. Call. He picked up on the first. "Ring, Dad," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I saw the news." "I know," he whispered. "Did you do it?" His throat tightened. No. A pause, just long enough to sting, then fight back. His heart broke a little in that moment. Not because of her doubt, but because she still believed he could. Fight. The next day, Michael stood in front of a small crowd of journalists and nonprofit staff. No stage, no podium, just him and a borrowed mic. About his past. About his past? About Rafik. About the stolen company, the sidewalk mornings, the broken trust, and the rebuild. The dollar, the second chance. And then he showed them. The code, line by line, not just what was wrong, but how it was planted. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He just stood there as a man who had nothing to hide. And when he was done, no one clapped. No one cheered, but no one walked away either. They stayed. They listened, and slowly. The story began to shift again, not because people suddenly decided to believe, but because he gave them no room not to. Behind the scenes, Elon watched. From a distance. He hadn't said much since the offer. He hadn't pushed. But now he called Sundar. "You think he's ready?" "He already was," Sundar replied. "Good, because I have something else in mind." But while all that moved in quiet rooms and distant phone lines, Rafiq watched and he wasn't done, not yet, because buried inside that same external server Michael had found was something else. A file one Michael hadn't seen, not yet. A file with his name on it, and inside, something that could destroy everything. The dollar that changed everything asterisk, the file wasn't large. It's just over 6 megabytes. No password protection, no encryption. It's almost like it was begging to be opened. It had been sitting quietly on the external server, buried behind lines of code, nested within folders labeled like system logs. Anyone else would have missed it, but Leah didn't, and when she opened it, she didn't speak. She just stared. A full minute passed before she whispered, "You need to see this." Michael leaned. Over her shoulder, still in his hoodie, eyes half closed from 3 days of barely sleeping, and there it was. Not malicious code, not blackmail, not financials. It was worse. It was a confession. A video file recorded 2 years ago in it. Rafiq sat in what looked like a hotel room. Pale walls, cheap art, curtains drawn. The lighting was bad. His face was pale and unshaven. He stared directly into the lens, a glass of something amber in his hand, and he spoke with a kind of tired calm. Like a man who had finally stopped running but hadn't decided yet whether to forgive himself. "If you're watching this," he said, "then I guess it's over. Or maybe it's just beginning. Either way, there are things I need to say. Things I didn't have the guts to tell you in person." Michael's breath caught. His eyes locked on the screen. "You were right," Rafiq continued. "About the project, about the investor. He was dirty. He said we should walk away. I didn't. Listen, I saw the money, and I got greedy. And when you pushed back, I blamed you. I told them it was your fault. I leaked false timelines, fake cost reports. And when the pressure came down, I threw you under the bus. I emptied the accounts before the deal collapsed. Told myself I was saving the company, but really I just didn't want to lose." Took a long sip from the glass, but we both lost. And you lost everything. Your family, your name, your life. He laughed, bitter and hollow. I watched you fall and I did nothing. Worse, I made sure you couldn't get up. Rafiq leaned forward and for the first time his voice cracked. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed it somewhere. Maybe someone finds this, maybe no one does. But I want to be on record. The truth, all of it is here. On the headlines, on the court docs. Here." He reached over and ended the recording, and just like that, the screen went dark. Michael didn't move. He didn't speak. But inside him, something broke. It's not like glass, not sharp or violent, but like a chain quietly snapping. Feel rage? Not even sadness. Just ... release. Leah turned to him slowly. "What do you want to do with it?" He didn't answer right away. He stared out the window at the street below, people moving like currents of light and noise. None of them knowing what had just shifted in the world above them. Finally, he said, "We let it go public. All of it. Not for revenge, not to clear my name, but because the truth deserves to breathe." And so they did. They released the file with a statement. Gone. Honest. Without fanfare or dramatics. Sundar backed it. Leah co-signed. Lon reposted. It without a comment, just a link. And for once, the internet didn't mock. It listened. The story spread, not like wildfire, more like a slow wave. People watched. People shared. The narrative shifted again, not into applause, but into understanding Michael. He didn't become a hero. He became something harder to earn. Human, his daughter came to visit the office that week. No cameras, no interviews. Just her in a backpack and a sandwich she had made for him. "You sleep at your desk now?" she teased, glancing at the rolled-up hoodie under his monitor. Only on Thursdays. He smiled. She handed him the sandwich. It's turkey, I remembered. He took it slowly. Thank you. They didn't talk about the past. They didn't have to. They talked about the project, about the new expansion Leah was planning, about how he'd started mentoring younger volunteers. His daughter told him about school, about a class she was failing, about a boy who liked her but didn't know how to talk to girls. Normal things. Healing things. And when she left, she hugged him. Really hugged him. And Michael just stood there holding the sandwich, wondering how something so small could feel like redemption. A week later, Elon called again. You still rebuilding nonprofits? Yeah, you ever think about building something bigger? Michael laughed. I think about a lot of things. Now, well, Elon said, if you're ever interested, I've got a team that could use a guy like you. Michael smiled. I'll think about it. He never called back, because he realized he didn't need to chase anything. Anymore, he had enough. The sidewalk no longer remembered his name. The city passed by him like he was just another face, and for the first time in years, that was exactly what he wanted. No headlines, no viral stories, just peace. He still kept the dollar, though. The one Sundar gave him folded in his wallet. Not for luck, not for proof, but to remind him that even a man who has lost everything can still be worth something. Again, if someone believes in him, and if he dares to believe in himself, * the end.